Welcome to Garage Gym Athlete Cool Downs. These episodes are short, actionable podcasts pulled from previous interviews and content we've been publishing for the last several years. So go for a walk, hop on the rower, or clip into the bike for this cool down episode. And the study that was reviewed or I discussed was endurance training intensity does not mediate interference to maximal lower body strength gain during short-term concurrent training. I hate the names of these studies. Basically, let's put it in different terms. We are going to discuss this week, should you only train strength if you want to get stronger? What are the pros and cons of that? What happens when you do train strength, but also have some sort of moderate or high intensity conditioning program to go in conjunction with that? And, what the overall effect of it is. So I'm going to start with what the interference effect is. So the interference effect describes the relatively smaller gains in strength and hypertrophy. So hypertrophy is muscle growth seen when combining strength and endurance training versus performance strength training in isolation. So the interference effect is just a really cool term that says, hey, if you train strength with something else like endurance or conditioning, you're not going to get as strong, or it's going to interfere with your strength gains. It's pretty well documented. But I think every time I've seen one of these studies, I get a little bit frustrated because I think the person who wrote the study or did the study while they shouldn't be, or the person who interprets the study typically, let me go off. The person who interprets the study, not necessarily the person who conducted the study, has some sort of strength training bias. And so they're like, this proves my point that you should not, do them concurrently because, spoiler alert, the results of the overall result of the study is that it is better to train strength by itself to gain more strength than to train strength with some sort of conditioning program attached to it. So that is the short of it. But there's a lot more to it, and that's kind of what I want to unpack. But first, I want to just get your initial thoughts on training them concurrently versus exclusively, and what you think about it, Joe.
I mean, since I've been doing this kind of programming for a number of years now, I know you can get stronger with doing everything. And I think even back when I did the bodybuilding bro sessions, I was still that kind of weird guy that was on base doing parachute sprints on the field after my workouts. So I think I personally always wanted to be well-rounded because I was always an athlete playing lacrosse and soccer and football and stuff. As far as, when seeing those bros in the gym that just going for strength and stuff, I guess if that's all you want, then they can probably get that faster. But I don't know. I guess it just depends on how people go about their conditioning aspect. If I think some people think that if they just lift, or if they were to do conditioning, that they're just thinking of, running for 30 or 60 minutes is conditioning. There's no middle ground, but that's not true.
Yeah, and that's everyone always looks at these outer extremes, right? Like you either are the power lifter who can deadlift 1,000 pounds, or you're the ultra endurance athlete who can run 100 miles, in a day, super fast or whatever. And that's not normally the case. That's not what a lot of us are trying to do. And so a few things. So just real quick results of the study. The people who trained strength only, like I said, they got stronger, but the people who trained strength with some sort of conditioning program, they tested moderate intensity and high intensity, and they got stronger as well, just a few percentage points behind the purely strength athletes. When all said and done, if I'm only a few percentage points behind you, I'm going to be okay with that if I'm a lot healthier, because I don't know why they didn't test it, but from what I see in the study, maybe they just thought it was going to be too obvious. But the VO2 max increase for the people who had a conditioning program increased a good amount, a couple percentage points. But then they didn't even test the strength people. There was no baseline for what happened to their VO2 max, I guess because they didn't care. Or maybe I don't think I missed it. They just didn't care about the VO2 max increase. And so what you're doing is they're saying, okay, train strength, but don't worry about conditioning if you want to get stronger. But what does that come with, and what does that do to your health? Because if you're not doing any sort of cardio, there's going to be a lot of other effects effects from that, like how about not being conditioned, not being able to recover, dying sooner? Like that one, that's kind of a big deal. If you don't have some sort of aerobic base in your fitness program, it's pretty important. And I don't know if you caught this in the strength thing, but in the study, they only trained strength after doing these really grueling endurance workouts. And they weren't easy endurance workouts. They were harder endurance workouts. And so from our programming, we basically never do that. So why would you hit these like really hard intervals and then go train strength? I don't know who programmed that in the study, and it doesn't make any sense to me. But have you ever done that? Have you ever gone like conditioning first, then strength after?
There's probably times I have. I can't think of anything specifically. There's probably times, yeah.
Yeah, and so
yeah, not best.
and this is for any athlete out there, and I'll get around to some takeaways and stuff. But any athlete out there, garage gym athlete or other, who wants to talk about programming and where you should fit in strength and where you should fit in conditioning, it's pretty simple. What you have to take into effect in your training order is the central nervous system and the coordination needed in further exercises. So what do I mean? If you fry your central nervous system with some sort of high intensity glycolytic conditioning session, and then you move to say overhead squats or something like that, you're not going to have the motor control to be able to perform that properly. So that's how you should be thinking about your programming. If you want to do something like an overhead squat, you should do an overhead squat after some activation activity and then move into that glycolytic high intensity conditioning after the fact to keep you injury free and safe. And so this is just a really poorly executed, in my opinion, but still the data is the data. And they say train strength first if you want to get stronger. Now, the only other thing I want to point out, have you read Unplugged?
I have not.
Okay. Really great book. I'm going to so it's called Unplugged, Evolve from Technology to Upgrade Your Fitness, Performance, and Consciousness by Brian McKenzie, Dr. Andy Galpin, and Phil White. So we had Brian McKenzie and
I know those names.
Dr. Andy Galpin on the Better Humanology podcast. And this isn't necessarily their information, but they mention it. The 4 best predictors of mortality are unchanged from 50 years ago. This is from the book. They say they're still VO2 max, leg strength, lean body mass, and grip strength. And so that's what I think as an athlete you need to look at when you're trying to be like, oh, I want to get stronger, so I only want to train strength because that's what this study says. But okay, you're going to have, let's say you're just trying to live a long, healthy life. You got that leg strength, maybe some grip strength, but your lean body mass and VO2 max won't be as good as if you had a conditioning program. And I don't think I need to argue or sit here and argue a lot about people having some sort of conditioning aspect, but we get a lot of questions in our strength track sometimes, even people who have quit the program because they're like, why is there like conditioning here? That you said this is a strength track. Why are you doing some conditioning? It's because we want to keep you well-rounded without moving into that like actual endurance zone where, it's kind of unnecessary to be training with strength. Like you don't want to be doing opposite ends of the spectrum all the time. But my main takeaway for the athlete is have some sort of training. If you're going to be doing purely strength training, that is going to complement that. What we do in the strength track is very low end, high burst conditioning. So creatine phosphate, some glycolytic, just to make sure that our athletes are seeing the conditioning they need to get better at the strength training. And that's the biggest thing. CrossFit exploded. And then after CrossFit started to die down, what got really big? Olympic weightlifting. And that's because CrossFit is really hard and it sucks. And Olympic weightlifting is not that. And it's just human nature. Like we're not going to want to do stuff that sucks all the time. And conditioning sucks. In my opinion, conditioning sucks way more than any strength workout I've ever done ever. And I don't, I'll go to my grave probably believing that. I'm sure there's some strength athletes who's like, oh, well, come work out with me. And I'm like, you come work out with me. We'll do some conditioning. And, it's just, you got to have both in your program. Don't get lazy. Don't become, the CrossFitter who turned into the Olympic weightlifter who has no conditioning now and can't walk up a flight of stairs or play with their kids. And don't become the strength athletes who quits all forms of conditioning and wants to be a powerlifter now and have, no conditioning and can't do anything. That's not, in my opinion, what an athlete is and not what you should be training for. So have some form of conditioning. Like I said, that's my main takeaway. It doesn't have to be long endurance based, but do it anyway and you'll be better for it.
I think there's also, peeling back even those layers, that's also how we build power sometimes. And which is a lot of things that, it's highlighted in a lot of your articles that's missing in people's strength programs is building power. And, that's what people are missing sometimes.
Yeah. I have a video, a side-by-side comparison video of me lifting around 500 pounds. I think one was 500 and one was 515 actually. Like they were actually different. And the 500-pound deadlift is like kind of the iconic deadlift you see with a more intermediate to novice trainee who's like super slow, like red-faced, like just this.
You're afraid for them to pass out.
Yeah, thank God he got that without dying. That was the 500-pound deadlift because, to be honest, I probably wasn't 100% ready to pull it, but through sheer brute force and willpower, I managed to do it. And then fast forward to like a year or two later, I started to train, like what you're saying, a little bit more power, working on the speed of the bar, things like that. And I just like ripped 515 pounds off the ground like twice as fast, and I was stronger, but not like significantly stronger. I was more powerful. And there's a big difference, and you're going to be a lot safer and see a lot more results and feel better as an athlete if you are more powerful, which involves a lot of the conditioning that we're talking about. And then also just like more speed lifting, dynamic effort lifting. Yeah,
I think we need to make that video resurface again. I think months ago I tried to find it because I don't know where it came up, but I'll have to get that out.
I think the actual, if memory serves me correct, the name of the article is something along the lines of taking your strength from Toyota to Lamborghini. So I got creative with that article title, but if you want to Google that, and we can link to it or whatever, but has the side-by-side comparison in it. Pretty cool little video, considering I have like very limited video skills and I somehow did that.
And just other hit points on training, not just strength or whatever, is that if you train a little bit more at a little more intensity, you're probably going to be training less time. So you're not going to be spending 2 hours in the gym because you have the rest between your sets. And then there's always the guys that are in their cutting phase or bulking phase. But like if you keep your body weight at a relatively fair percentage, then that is also going to, help you in the long run as well. And, if normally the guys that are going for the bodybuilding, just lifting strength anyway, are doing it for aesthetic purposes as is. So why not be more efficient that way?
Well, some guys are just they don't care what they weigh or necessarily look like body fat percentage. They just want to be strong, and they tried the conditioning model for a little while, but it was uncomfortable. And so now they just want to lift weights in their garage or basement or whatever. And I guess I'm going so far as to say that's not okay. Like, how some people are like, no, you do your thing and you be happy and that's cool. I just don't believe that because the literature is saying you're going to die sooner. And so I'm saying that that's not okay because I don't want you to die sooner. So I think it's okay for me to say it. Like, just have a little bit you can just walk your dog in the evening. That's honestly enough for a lot of people. But have some conditioning element to your program no matter what. Yeah. And
I keep saying bros, but I feel like females are much more goal driven whenever they get into a program. I don't know if you've noticed or that at all as well.
Some of the most dedicated athletes that I've worked with personally at Garage Gym Athlete have been females and people who've crushed their goals. So I've definitely seen that, but I've also seen a lot of males in the same boat. So yeah. All right. I think that's it, man. I think, just a big one, looking at these studies, the main reason we want to do it is give you some sort of takeaway. The takeaway today is always have some sort of conditioning, like the type of conditioning I mentioned. You could research that stuff a little bit more. We could do future podcasts on it, talking about creatine, phosphate, glycolytic conditioning, energy system training, a lot of stuff that we do at Garage Gym Athlete. But sometimes you have to look at these studies and then contrast them with another study. And that's what I did last time. That's what I did this time. I won't do it every time, but it's like, okay, yeah, getting stronger, you just do a strength program. It's like, well, you can still get stronger doing both. But then let's zoom out and look at these mortality rates. Okay, can we improve VO2 max, leg strength, lean body mass, and grip strength? And that is the biggest predictor of, if you were to just sit down and write a program, if you focus it around those areas, you're going to have one really well-rounded human being who's going to, barring some unforeseen circumstance, live longer statistically than other people. So it's just good training.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to flip it around too because you addressed this before, that strength training and endurance programming as well. So flipping the whole thing around is just as beneficial. So like, whereas you shouldn't just do strength, well, you also shouldn't just do endurance.
Yeah, dude. Like, I wish I could. Well, I mean, you could go check out our sample programming and take a look. But the Endure track right now, like, I just trained today and did nothing but strength work today. There was no conditioning element today. And, you know, it's my take on this whole thing and improving someone's endurance is very different than I think a lot of other people out there. And it's often missed in most endurance community. They might involve some lunges. Like I looked at, I did a lot of research and checked out a lot of other people's programs in preparation, really like a year leading up. Like we've been talking about Endure forever. And I wasn't like, to be honest, I didn't feel as proficient in programming that. So I just did all this research and reading to make sure I was good to go. And people would have like this really solid like intervals at these given heart rates and these given intensities. And I'd be like, okay, that's great. But like, and then they'd be like, okay. And then after that, just do a couple sets of push-ups and a couple sets of squats to end of the day. And I'm like, that's the strength element? Like that's what you're doing? Like I just disagree. I think you could do it better. And so have a lot of strength training. Thanks for listening to today's Cool Down. If for some ridiculous reason you are not subscribed to Garage Gym Athlete Programming, fix that problem right now. Go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a free trial, and get started with us today. Thanks for listening.